Hi there, welcome back. So glad you returned to get some more chapters. I think today we're going to do maybe 2 or 3 chapters because there's some short ones coming up. And if you're new here, welcome. So happy to have you. The links for the previous chapters are in the description box below. I'm reading from my book called Free Will, and the link to purchase that book is also in the description. That would make me very, very happy if you purchased it. But if you just want to log on for Storytime and get a chapter or 2 or 3 at a time, come on back and subscribe to the channel and you can get the whole story. Starts off with the preface, which is really an important part of laying the groundwork for the whole story. So we're going to start on chapter 5 today. Let me just have a cheers. Celebrating today. Okay, chapter 5. This, just to kind of give us an update, last chapter, Dad's disfellowshipped, no longer an elder, and he moved out, and etc., etc. So that's where we're at right now. Chapter 5. A few months passed, and Mom and Dad decided to try to reconcile. Dad was reinstated into the church, meaning he was in good standing and could be spoken to and part of the congregation again. Things seemed like they might get normal again. We kids were over the moon that Dad was home and that he was back at church too. After they reconciled, they decided we were going to move. All 6 of us piled into our midnight blue 73 Monte Carlo and spent a day house hunting. Things seemed tense still that day in the car. I remember the Simon and Garfunkel 8-track Bridge Over Troubled Water was playing in the car that day. I remember sitting in the back seat thinking, gosh, these songs are depressing. Let's cheer this place up. After The Boxer and El Condor Pasa, finally, Cecilia came on, and I felt a huge relief to have an upbeat tune cheer the whole car up. We kids were all singing along with Paul and Art. Mom and Dad ultimately decided to move to Canoga Park, which was about an hour from our hometown in Monrovia. I suppose they did this to get away from where everyone seemed to know the dirty laundry. At this point, Sandy and I were 11 and 12. Sometimes we were allowed to stay home to babysit our brothers during the daytime. One day, Mom and Dad had driven to Canoga Park to make all the final arrangements in the purchase of our new home. We kids were at home playing in the neighborhood. Sandy and I were riding our Huffies. Mine was had a purple metallic banana seat and a sissy bar. I loved that beauty. We were flying down the street. We would ride with no hands, pop wheelies, and see who could ride a wheelie the longest. I was riding a wheelie when I came down hard. My front wheel popped right off the axle. According to a neighbor lady who was watching, my bike was bounced so hard backward from the impact that I flipped backward completely to land smack dab on my face. There was a lot of blood. The neighbor lady ran out to get a cold, wet washcloth. She gave it to me and I gently pressed it to my face. My nose was bleeding and my mouth hurt. Sandy and I decided to walk our bikes home. Mine with no front wheel, Sandy wheeled home for me. With tears and blood staining my face, I took hers, which made it easier to hold the cool cloth to my mouth. We were a good 3 blocks away from home. When we got home, Sandy called one of our babysitters to come over and help. When she got there, I still held the blood-soaked washcloth to my face. She said, "Let me take a look, honey." When I moved the cloth, her face winced and she cringed. She unconvincingly tried to say calmly, "Your mom and dad should be home soon. Just don't look at it." Okay, now I have to look at it. After she left, I sat on my parents' bed in front of the mirror that hung over their dresser. I moved the damp red cloth, opened my mouth to see my front teeth were pointing to the back of my throat. I couldn't even see them till I tilted my head all the way back. I felt sick. I cried and waited a couple more hours for Mom and Dad to return. I spent hours in the dentist chair that night. Two dentists worked together to carefully pull my teeth forward without breaking them. At one point, my jaw locked open. It was one of the most panicky feelings I'd ever experienced. I had permanently damaged my jaw. It didn't develop properly because of the impact of this accident. My teeth were shattered inside, although they stayed intact on the exterior. I had to be on a liquid diet for weeks to make sure I wouldn't start chipping them. They stayed okay for a while, years actually, but slowly started chipping away and breaking down. Now I have two perfect front teeth made of porcelain. After getting hurt and waiting for hours for Mom and Dad to get back, it was such a relief to have them back by my side again. And they were both there. I remember feeling so safe after Mom and Dad were with me at the dentist office and afterwards, both attentively caring for my needs, bringing me gifts, and making me milkshakes. Even my sister Sandy brought me a pink Holly Hobbie statuette that had her arms outstretched wide. It read, "I love you this much." My family was in harmony again. So here were the steps after my dad got reinstated, and it seemed like our parents were going to work things out. We all got our hopes up that things were going to go good. So we'll find out what happens when we make our move. Our little family moved to Canoga Park. I was supposed to be going into my first year in junior high in Monrovia, but in Canoga Park Elementary School went to 6th grade. I liked my school okay, liked my teacher, and really liked the cute boy who sat across from me. His name was Gavin. He was blonde, his skin was always sun-kissed, and he wore a white football jersey every day. Could he possibly have known the effect he had on me? He seemed to smile at me with his perfect white teeth in a way that said, "Yeah, I know, I am pretty damn irresistible." But his words were humble and sweet. In the condominium complex that we moved to, there were many families with kids. One of the kids was an actor that we had seen in a couple of movies. At the corner of Shoup and Sherman Way, this complex had a pool and a rec room with ping pong and lots of other activities to do. We had fun getting to know our cool new neighbors. This move and the changes that were happening in our family allowed some subtle shifts in the way Mom and Dad were parenting. Whether they were so distracted with the marriage problems or because my dad's faith had begun to fade, some things that used to be prohibited were now okay. Living here, we started at a new Jehovah's Witness congregation in Canoga Park, and we made a few friends there. But it was suddenly okay to spend more time playing with the neighbor kids too, and my friends from school. We now seem to be allowed to spend a bit more time with non-believers. I made a good friend at school. Her name was Cece. She also lived close by. She had brothers and sisters that were way older than her. Her parents were way older than mine. We played jacks, baked cookies, and listened to records. We loved the Steve Miller Band. We'd go swimming till we were exhausted and then go steal pomegranates from a neighboring farm. Mom always made us change into junky clothes and go outside to eat the pomegranates, as if the juice were a toxic substance dangerous to anything it came in contact with. Cece and I were in the same class at school. She had a crush on Gavin's best friend, Craig. Cece and I sat side by side, and Gavin and Craig sat directly across from us. We spent way more time talking about them than talking to them. One day, Cece and I made a pact to wear our halter tops to school to impress the guys. We wore them on the weekends in the heat of the valley, but school was another story. My very conservative mom would never approve, so I wore a bulky sweatshirt over it when I left for school that day and unveiled my white eyelet sexy number after arriving at school. Cece failed to come through on her end. She chickened out and wore a regular t shirt. This was 1974. A halter top was pretty risque for a sixth grader. Now, I was my teacher's pet, which I secretly loved. Mr. Coleman would make a comment every day about how he'd never in his career seen a left hander with such perfect penmanship. I lapped that up. But that day, he pulled me aside and asked me if I thought that top was appropriate for school. I could have died. I immediately fetched my sweatshirt and wore it the rest of that hot September day. And that's the end of chapter 6. I'm going to go right into chapter 7. A few weeks into 6th grade, I found out that my parents' marriage was really over. I found out while sitting in the back seat of a 1973 Gran Torino. Sandy and I were out at Lake Havasu with John and Mary Ann. I guess the fact that our parents were still close enough with John and Mary Ann after all that had gone down to let us go to the river with them kind of shows that either Mom and John were very understanding, forgiving people, or that things between my dad and Mary Ann weren't really done. Dad showed up unexpectedly one day. Sandy and I saw a strange boat approaching our island. I said, "That looks like Dad." "It is Dad. What's he doing here?" When he got on shore of the little island we were camping on, he told us that he had come to pick us up early. There had been a pretty gnarly boating accident on the river that week. Some people had died in the crash. He said that Mom had heard about it and that it was making her really nervous that we were out there without them. Dad told us to gather our things because he was taking us home. Sandy and I went into the tent to roll up our sleeping bags and gather our bathing suits and other stuff. I had a bikini drying in the sun, so I went out to grab it off a lounge chair. As I rounded the spot where Mary Ann stood at the little green Coleman camping stove, cooking bacon and pancakes, I witnessed something that shook me up a bit. Mary Ann had a beard. My dad leaned in close to her, and in a very soft voice, a voice unfamiliar to me, said to her, "Can I have a sip?" They shared an exchange that was so subtle it barely registered. Yet in my mind, bells went off. Dad had been reinstated. Mom and Dad were working things out. Everything was going to be okay after all. But this small exchange, even in my immaturity, told me quietly inside it wasn't over. We loaded up the car. Sandy jumped in the front seat next to Dad. I sat in the back, sprawling out on the huge bench seat in the back of the big car. I was going to catch some Z's. Before I could nod off, I could hear Dad talking very serious to Sandy. It commanded my attention because Dad seemed upset. I had never seen him cry. It was midday and we were driving through the Mojave Desert. The air conditioning was working overtime, and there was an 8-track tape of Tom T. Hall reeling in the stereo. Dad pulled the car over to the side of the road. He was crying now. He looked at Sandy and said, "Mom and I are getting a divorce, and it's mostly my fault." He put his arms around Sandy, and they both cried. I stared down at my lanky, tanned legs and cried quietly as Tom T. Hall sang, "I love little baby ducks, old pickup trucks, slow-moving trains, and rain. So that's the end of chapter 7. So through those chapters, we got a little taste of what it was like when someone you love gets reinstated and how hopeful you can be. Very interestingly, I watched a video this morning on critical thinker. And I watched a gentleman, I think his name was Nash, that was interviewed, and he mentioned the thought of, or the point that once you're disfellowshipped, even when you get reinstated, you're kind of never looked at the same unless you move away and people don't know. And I definitely can vouch for that. I saw it happen with my dad and with my family, you know, in relation to my dad. And then later on, happened to me. And I got reinstated. And people just don't look at you the same anymore once, you know, it's like, it's a very, very, very judgmental organization that thrives on tattling and fault finding and expecting each other to be perfect. And there's even people that are in there that kind of seem like they enjoy tattling and getting people in trouble, or when they enjoy when people have problems. Unfortunately, I mean, I truly believe that everybody that's in that organization, I think we're all born with beautiful hearts of love, but we get caught up in belief. And once belief starts taking root in you, wow, it can really change how you view yourself and how you view others. So I'm not a big believer in belief. And we'll talk about that more later. And then obviously you saw in chapter 6 where I tiptoed a little near puberty. And of course, being raised as a witness, the whole, you know, coming of age and being interested in sex and all that stuff, it's just such a unique experience when you're in that organization, because the rules are insanely strict and the world around you is nothing like that. So it's a pretty strange world to live in, as you probably know. Anyway, that was a pretty emotional last chapter. You probably noticed I got a little choked up. Just hearing that paragraph about my dad telling us that he and my mom were getting a divorce for real. And he started crying, and I just lost my dad last year. Here I go again. It's very fresh. And you'll find out through the course of the story, it's like I spent so many years not spending that much time with my dad because of being in the organization. And then when I finally left, which he was kind of a little bit instrumental in helping me to do that, no more than a little bit. And wow, how amazing, just a wonderful relationship with him. And I got to spend so much time with him before he did pass. So years, and we actually had a business together and everything. So it was wonderful. And it was really great to be able to talk about this kind of stuff with him. And he actually read my book before he was sick and gone. So that was really wonderful. So anyway, I hope I'm going on. I shouldn't have drank the champagne while I was doing this. I hope you enjoyed today's chapters. And if you haven't done so, I hope you subscribe, and I hope you come back for chapter 8, and we'll see how many chapters we're going to do on the next run. But I really appreciate you being here, and just would love to hear your comments, and take care.